Joining us on the Spirit of EQ podcast today is Shannon Lee. Shannon is the executive director of Leadership Columbus. She's a coach, she's an author, she's a leader, and we are super excited that she's on the show today. So Shannon, welcome.
Thank you, Eric. I'm so glad to be here. I appreciate you having me.
You know, as I do with many of our guests, I start thinking, okay, wow, I want to ask her this, I want to ask her that, or those kind of things. But it's interesting because you may have heard this and read about it. Maybe you're even discussing it in some of the places and where you interact, is about where in the world are we going with this thing that we call or used to call the workplace. And I'm not going to say, Shannon, oh, do you have the answer to fix all of the both sides of the equation? But it is having an impact on people, right? I mean, it is one of those things where there's a lot of talk on both sides of the equation. So, okay, two-part type question. How do you feel about the current state of work and where it might be heading?
Well, I feel kind of two ways, little dichotomy here.
Okay.
I'm very hopeful on one side. I'll share why. But I also have concerns. I'm hopeful because I've seen a lot of advancements made in the workplace around critical parts of work that create more belonging in the workplace. I know that there have been lots of both national and worldwide studies done around this thing we call belonging, and that from an emotional intelligence standpoint, a lot of that research tells us that it's probably like the single most common thing that people experience, or the lack of that are experiencing in their lives, is this lack of belonging. And so I believe that workplaces have made a lot of advancements in that arena, specifically because they've done more work around DEI, around anti-racism, and around equity in the workplace. And we've seen a wave of that. And unfortunately, much of it was catalyzed by the murder of George Floyd. The reason why I say unfortunately is because it shouldn't have to take something as egregious as that for us to say, hey, everybody is valuable in the workplace. Everybody, you know what I mean? Like it's almost disgusting when you think about it from that perspective. Nonetheless, here we are, and we have seen a lot of improvements in that area. I'm hopeful because there's also a lot of up and coming leaders. There's new leaders and those who are getting ready for leadership who are embracing this people first leadership concept. And you could call it lots of different things. I've heard it called servant leadership. I've heard it called people first. I've heard it called so many different things. But the bottom line is there's more people who are just innately embracing this idea that people are more important than profit. And they also believe that when you put people first, that profit actually doesn't suffer, that it actually improves our ROI. Right. And what I'm most excited about along those lines is you have a group of people who understand that the benefit of investing into human capital, the benefit of investing into DEI and anti-racism, yes, it positively impacts our bottom line in businesses. But this new influx of leaders understand that that is not why it is a good idea. Because if that's the only reason why it's a good idea, then what we've done is we've made DEI, for example, a commodity. So what happens then if having diversity and inclusion and belonging in the workplace somehow doesn't mean we're more profitable? Does that mean now we're not going to value people anymore who maybe don't look like dominant culture, who don't look like white cisgendered individuals? I just think that there's a new wave of leaders coming that embrace that the reason why this is so important is because of the dignity of human beings, period, hard stop.
Yeah.
It happens currently to be good for the bottom line, that ends up being an outcome, not the goal. And so that makes me really hopeful that there's more and more people, and we see this in our programs, that and I don't want to necessarily say younger folks, what I'm really referring to when I say early in the career would be, whether or not they've had college is irrelevant, but what I'm saying is they are really kind of taking on that first management experience, and they have an opportunity to really influence others in a real way in the workplace. Those are the folks I'm talking about. It just so happens a lot of them tend to be younger. That's not to say that there aren't folks that have been at this for a while, a little longer in the tooth, like you and I, that also embrace these things, because I do see that too. So I'm not trying to pick on a certain experience level or age group, but by far and large, I'm seeing that as a good thing. The concern that I have, though, on the flip side of that, is that we are still seeing trends. However, that senior DEI roles are held primarily by white cisgendered women. And that these roles, and sometimes entire departments, are the first ones or one of the first to be eliminated when there are budget cuts. And so what this tells me, and I'm making a conclusion here, and I understand that my conclusion may not be fact, or it may not be fact all the time. So I'm acknowledging that.
Sure.
But what the impact of this, what this either intentionally or unintentionally communicates, is that decision makers still see this work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging as a nice to have, that it's not critical, which to me is a devaluing of human beings.